William Schomburg heads the International Committee of the Red Cross delegation in Gaza, and he's currently in Rafah. I spoke to him earlier and began by asking, with the US starting airdrops, to set out how desperately aid was needed.
There is no doubt that the humanitarian needs in Gaza today are just immense and frankly unprecedented for the Gaza Strip. Hunger is on the rise. Families find it very difficult to find enough clean water to drink, and the healthcare system has all but collapsed. So even though aid drops are a real measure of last resort, at the same time, we welcome any opportunity to ensure that there is an increase in humanitarian assistance for civilians who desperately need it.
Just explain why it is a last resort, why, although it might look impressive, there are so many drawbacks with these kind of drops.
Well, I mean, there's relatively small quantities of assistance that can be delivered through airdrops. Of course, they're logistically very complicated, and they're also the most expensive way of delivering aid, which is why it can only really be used as a last resort, although this is something that the International Committee of the Red Cross is not directly involved in.
The number of aid trucks that have got in have halved since January. So can you just go into a bit more detail about the kind of obstacles you're facing, whether it's security or a breakdown of law and order?
The breakdown of law and order is, of course, something that is extremely concerning, and we need to be able to operate safely. Of course, the breakdown in law and order is squarely linked to how desperate people are on the ground. We hear reports increasingly of how much hunger is impacted, specifically parts of northern Gaza, and that is pushing people to their limits as frustration reaches a real high. Just the sheer quantity of what needs to arrive is currently not matching the extremely high humanitarian needs, whether it's for food, winter clothing, or medication.
Is there a particular story that stuck with you that just highlights for people how desperate people are for food now?
I mean, you see it everywhere you go. The prices have skyrocketed. Even in Rafah, where access to the market and to food is nowhere near as complicated as it is in Gaza, but people are struggling to meet their daily needs. Driving around Rafah city, it's a common sight to see children barefoot walking through the mud, opening up rubbish bags and trying to see what there is inside of them. No child should have to experience that, and that's a very dark image that I hope does not continue and exist for much longer.
And how has Thursday's tragedy at the aid convoy, how might that hamper further efforts to get aid in your view?
No aid distribution should end in the death of civilians, and what happened on Thursday was a tragedy. All efforts need to be made by the parties to the conflict to ensure that humanitarian actors can safely reach people in need. And we hope that there will not be a repetition of this. We hope that access will increase and that people will be able to desperately receive the items that they require at this time.
You're in Rafah, where it's reported today that 10 Palestinians were killed by an Israeli airstrike on a tent. What information have you managed to gather about that?
We are deeply distressed by the report that there were up to 10, if not more, civilians that were killed in a reported airstrike this afternoon. We've been trying to gather a better understanding of the situation right now, but no matter what, I think I just want to reiterate that the rules of war are clear and that civilians should never be a target.